Hey. This is just a video for the AJATT Refold MIA Matt versus Japan audience out there. You guys, I love the community. I watched about a year ago when I was in the thick of working on my Spanish. Saw a lot of really encouraging videos, and it's just good to see where people are at, what they're doing, how they feel about it at various points. I'm at about 2,500 hours of Spanish. That's an estimate. And I know I'm kind of the grandpa of the group at almost 46. I don't even think I know what exactly Discord is or Twitch or wherever you guys are hanging out. I'm not hanging out there, but I do watch videos on YouTube and have searched around and seen people, with their Japanese learning journeys, a couple people posting about Spanish. I'm excited to add to the conversation, and, we'll see what I can add to the conversation. So, obviously the big question is, can I speak Spanish? Sí, yo puedo hablar en español muy bien, but it's not a focus of mine. So, let me tell you the story about my Spanish, and, anyway, forgot to tell you, I'm at the airport. I'm about to fly to Spain. So I think we can all agree that being in a country that speaks Spanish is an unfair advantage, and everybody here is interested, obviously, in what you can accomplish from your couch or your bedroom or, in front of your laptop or wherever you do your immersion style Spanish. That was smooth of me to drop that on the floor. Sorry. I wanted to film this before I hopped on the plane, and got to start taking Spanish steroids by being in a country. So here's my Spanish journey, right? I took French classes in high school, obligatory French classes. I think my mom kind of pushed me to take French over Spanish or any other language that was available, because it was poquito más adinerado o algo así. And I took a couple years of French, and then, I took the basics that were required. I kind of liked it. I liked memorizing stuff, and I enjoyed memorizing vocabulary and learning how to say, more and more things. So I went ahead and added, a third year, a fourth year. I even went into college my freshman year and took a year of Spanish in college, or not Spanish, but French in college. And I can attest to the utter futility of that. I couldn't understand any kind of high-speed French conversation at all. I mean, just complete gibberish. Everybody who's tried to learn a language knows exactly that feeling. I never broke out of that feeling at all. I never really had a legitimate conversation with anybody in French, which is just crazy. I mean, just to learn vocabulary and, grammar and do worksheets and, maybe do a little dictation. I don't really remember all the things that we did. And, if you really look and calculate the hours, the classroom hours plus the amount of hours that you're really studying, and you kind of have to count how many hours you're thinking about it too, in some sense. If you don't really care about it, the second you stop studying, you don't think about it again until you have to work on some homework or go back to class. So, it's not effective, I think, not because the methodology is really all that flawed. I would say from my experiences so far, I really think the immersion method of just kind of taking in a lot of TV shows, audio, reading a lot of books, and just kind of waiting for your brain to get it and to start spewing a language out of your mouth that sounds halfway decent is, I think it's really inefficient. So, I mean, I can't sing the holy high praises of the method per se, but what's great about the method, for me personally, I have this nervous system problem where I can't concentrate really hard for too long. And so doing rote memorization or, really, really hard things that take a tremendous amount of mental focus and active brain usage, I can't do those things. So for me, it's I learn the passive way or not at all. And I'm thankful that you can learn passively. I think there's no question whatsoever that you can learn passively. It just takes longer. The good news is that it's effortless. I mean, it's not, you're literally doing the same thing that you do in your mother language. You dick around on YouTube, you watch some videos, you scroll through some comments, you pop over to Netflix and you watch a show for a while. And the show is, you might miss a little bit of the subtleties of the meaning of what you're hearing when you're not completely fluent yet, but you still get the gist, and you can follow along. The show's still exciting, and it's totally fun. Reading is the most active thing that I did, and I've read a ton. I'm on book 7 of the Harry Potter series. I've read I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter in Spanish. I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in Spanish, and I've listened to several audiobooks. So I listened to Project Hail Mary in Spanish. I listened to a few Harry Potter books in Spanish. I listened to Atomic Habits in Spanish and a couple others. So I've consumed a lot of books. My philosophy, like after I've listened to a bunch of Stephen Krashen's lectures, and I've watched a bunch of Steve Kaufman videos, and I was pretty convinced that there is something special about reading, that it is kind of like a cheat code, that is a more efficient way to learn a language, and that it's more active, and that's why it's more efficient. But it's also like you're just engaging in a story and enjoying it. You're not necessarily like studying. So it's fun, it's sustainable. You can do it for an hour and a half a day, and which is what I did out on average, and focus on that and just follow along with the story, not stress out about the vocabulary. Now, I would stop and look up the words and the phrases that I really just had no clue about. But I wouldn't go back and study them. I knew that, okay, just make a little mental note that that's what that word means. And when I encounter it again, I probably still won't recognize it. Maybe a third time, I won't quite recognize it. But eventually, it's going to be, oh, yeah, that's what that word means. I get it. That's what that phrase means. I get that. So that was kind of how I did it. So pretty active reading with a lot of word lookups. I tracked my word lookups, which was fun, just like how much I was looking up. So if I go back about a year when I started the Harry Potter series, I was looking up between 6 and 7 words per page, which was super tedious. So I started, before I read the Harry Potter series, I would get like an English version and a Spanish version, and I would put the books side by side and literally go through things every, line by line. Super tedious, but if you can do that for like a book or two, you should be at a point where you can do lookups, like I said, 6 or 7 a page. That's like right on the cusp of being too frustrating and annoying to do and continue. But I was able to press through it, and I found by the end of the first book, I'm more like at 5. The second book, I'm looking up, between like 3.5 to 4 words per page. Third book, I'm finally under 3, and so on and so forth. And by the time I got to book 6, that was the first book where I was averaging fewer than 1 lookup per page. And I would say that's pretty honest. It wasn't me just getting progressively lazier over time and looking up fewer and fewer words. I was pretty much the same, looking up anything that I really needed help on. And, even stuff that, looking up words that I knew was a rare word. I'd never seen it before, and here I have been reading. I've read thousands of pages, haven't seen this word yet. I know it's not a word that I really need, that comes up very often, not super important at all for achieving any kind of fluency, but I still stopped and looked those up, and I want to reach that point of totally comfortable fluency. But that doesn't kind of like explain the whole story. So I started March 17th of 2022, And I've averaged about 3 hours a day since then of just like totally passive stuff. So mostly Netflix series, and I did about a year with the subtitles on, and then was able to wean off of that. So we're talking about 1,000 hours total of Spanish in. I was able to start weaning off some subtitles, and I was reading a lot of books and splitting my time kind of 50-50 between those two activities. But I've also, if I have like a little idle time, like I'll watch a YouTube video, scroll through the comments a little bit, maybe 5 or 10 minutes a day, I'll scroll through the news headlines and just kind of check it out. Again, maybe looking up 1 or 2 words, but otherwise just trying to figure out, just kind of figure out what that headline is, and maybe open up the article and read a little bit. And that's pretty much it, except, again, the audiobooks. Audiobooks for me are really tough because you're listening, and for me, 30 seconds of not clearly understanding what the meaning is, and I'm totally out. So I would say for the first 6 months, any attempts to listen to audiobooks, I would literally be asleep in less than 10 minutes. So sorry about this notification coming over the loudspeaker. Hopefully you can still make out what I'm saying, but yeah, that was that. So what makes my stories a little bit interesting is that I took the French in school. It didn't work at all. But my last semester of college, I took a semester of Spanish. I knew I was going to travel to some Spanish-speaking countries after graduating. Had a trip planned with my girlfriend at the time. And then we went to Central America for 5 weeks, to Guatemala and Honduras. Guatemala is known for having a lot of Spanish schools and being kind of a trendy tourist activity to do is to do Spanish school. You get 20 hours a week, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week of one-on-one Spanish with a teacher, which is a great way to just hang out with a local and have conversations and try to figure out how to communicate with each other. I thought that was totally fun. Occasionally they'd bust out a worksheet for you to do, which sucked. But for the most part, you were kind of just actively trying to communicate with with a person, which is really exciting. I'm traveling now. Why? Traveling's awesome. Why is it awesome? The best thing about it is meeting people in a totally foreign country and trying to communicate with them in their language, and anything that you can get across and transmit between the two of you is super exciting. So anyway, I had some real world Spanish, and I found that my Spanish level was better after 1 semester, and just a few weeks in Central America, my Spanish was better than it was after 5 years of French in school. So part of that was just being forced to speak and having to communicate. So, everybody's wondering early input, should I be doing early input? Here's my experience with early input. It really helps you get to a point where you're conversational more quickly, right? If you're memorizing how to say things and you are practicing saying them, you will get better at speaking quickly and you will do fairly well. What you will suck at, most likely, is understanding what people are saying when they're spewing 100-mile-an-hour Spanish at you. You're not really practicing the skill. And I would find myself just I would be nervous that they would speak to me, and I have that awkward moment where I'd have to be ¿qué? And so I would just be I can't believe I dropped that again. I'd be super extroverted and just try to dominate the conversation, always be, because then I would know what we were talking about if I was the one initiating all the conversation. So, that was annoying. I then went and traveled around Central and South America again many years later, over a decade later. I went and spent 3.5 months in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Colombia. Same thing. I'm speaking a lot. I've got a notebook where I'm memorizing how to say words and phrases. And in my experience, you can get conversational in 500 hours, right? you may not understand what people are saying, but you can stop them. You can ask them questions. How do you, what did you say? And you could just use a word that you heard in the sentence and be like, okay. And I did that. And what I found is that I ran into that wall that Matt versus Japan talks about, where you're just kind of translating English into Spanish using words that you kind of memorize like out of a dictionary practically. And some phrases as well. The phrases are superior because you're using whole chains that are used. If you're learning stuff like, lo siento, por supuesto, all those like little things like that. Claro que sí. All those kinds of things like really help. Much better than just learning like rote vocabulary. But there's really nothing wrong with learning like adjectives and nouns, right? If you can point at any object and you know what that's called, and that's really helpful. And that's probably how most kids start out, when they're really, really young, is pointing at stuff and saying, bottle, baba, or mama, dada. Learning all the nouns is fine. Like, I wish somebody had a perfect list of like all the Spanish nouns and you could just go memorize all the nouns. There's nothing wrong with that. That would be super efficient. But it doesn't help much to like learn the verbs because of all the conjugations, and then how people pair verbs with certain things is like really unique, right? Like in Spanish, like you don't say hago un error. You don't say like I make a mistake. You say cometo un error. You commit an error. So the verb pairings are something that I find is something you can only really figure out over a long period of time. Another thing, like there was so much of Spanish that I just didn't know whatsoever. Like I didn't know a ton of like phrases or how they phrase things. I would have never picked up on something like, me doy cuenta, or I don't know, I can't think of other ones, but even just like, looking up at the ceiling is not, you're not looking at the ceiling, you're contemplando el cielo, el techo. That kind of thing. So you use like unique verbs. You can't just like straight translate things from one to another. And to me, like I'm solving that. And so that's what I really wanted to fix. I wanted to learn Spanish for real. I wanted to be able to sit down and watch a movie. I could have conversations with people and it was really fun, and I could like meet, foreigners and like hang out and go to soccer games and restaurants and, get on buses and go to do hikes, and all that stuff was great. So it's not about that. It's just more about like the personal journey of like, dude, like I really want to understand this language. I want it to be easy. I want it to be comfortable. I don't want to feel like that little bit of anxiety when somebody starts speaking, worrying that I'm not going to be able to understand them. And, also just like on an intellectual level, like I'm super curious what the whole process is like. So my Spanish is good. Like I'm functional. Like I can sit down and listen to Project Hail Mary and understand the book. And it's just, like a highly complicated, complex book. I can sit down and watch and understand shows. Like I'm good now. I can communicate, and so even though I haven't practiced speaking at all, like I haven't had a conversation in over a year in Spanish with anybody. I could pick up as soon as we get to Spain, I'm going to be speaking freely, having conversations, and it won't be hard. So that part is all good, but I want to know what that process is like. Like I'm super curious about taking it all the way. Like what are all the stages? And I think that's why we watch these videos, to see how people are doing in their language learning journeys with like the AJATT, MIA, Refold type of stuff. It's like, how long is it really going to take? Where are you going to be after X number of days, months, weeks, hours? How many hours does it truly take? So anyway, I think you'll be fluent after 2,500 hours of Spanish. Like it would be hard not to be really functional, to be able to understand things. And once you can understand things, you're probably just a few weeks away of like speaking and conversing a lot before you are pretty good. My speaking ability is going to smooth out a ton on this trip. I've been speaking like in the shower, or like maybe reading a page or two out loud, just to like, keep the muscles of my mouth functioning. while I'm learning. But anyway, I want to go all the way, and I want to see what that experience is like. I think that's what that's why a lot of us are drawn to Matt versus Japan is, he kind of wanted to experience, like he was treating it like he's training to be a pro athlete in Japanese. I kind of want to do that in Spanish. And anyway, that's a little bit about my journey. Happy to answer any questions. And I'm excited to see what I'm going to do. A lot of traveling in the next year and a half or so, and continue doing Spanish instead of like 3 hours a day. Once I'm like out and functioning and making friends and talking and doing that all the time, I'm sure I'll be up to 5 or 6 hours a day, and I'm going to keep going for like at least another 16, 17 months and get to 5,000 hours. So maybe I'll do an update at 5,000 hours to kind of show you where I'm at. And anyway, I guess that's all I have to say about it. This video's getting super long, and my upload speeds have sucked lately, so this might take me like a week to upload, depending on how the Wi-Fi is where I land in Madrid. But I'm about to get on the plane here in an hour or two, and we'll see how it goes. Keep pushing, and just enjoy the process, and keep logging those hours. You'll definitely get there.